Yeah, we start with a question. It's very important to many players.
Okay.
Were we able to fly in Legion in the new content?
So one of the things that we're talking about and planning right now, and I think we're happy with where we ended up on the decisions with Draenor, where you start off and you're not able to fly, you get to know the land, you have an exploration mechanic there, but at some point you're able to unlock the ability to fly. That's something we're actively working on in patch 6.2.2 right now for Draenor, and I think right now that we think that's the model for Legion. So there'll be some amount of time where you level up, and there'll be some things that you do to unlock the ability to fly at some point later.
Where exactly are the broken isles located?
That's a great question. We haven't actually shown that on the map yet.
Yes.
So
Obviously.
we'll have that. We'll have that at some point. We'll kind of reveal that later.
Okay.
Are there any changes to the raid system, like the size and the difficulty?
You know, we actually radically changed the raid philosophy and the raid how it worked every single expansion. We actually think the raid philosophy worked pretty well this time. We've talked about a lot about how to make loot better. We've talked about ways to improve personal loot for the next expansion. We haven't decided on any changes, but so far I've actually been really happy with having the 3 difficulty levels and having the normal and the heroic both flexible in terms of their size.
Will we also have the Warforged and socket system like it was in Draenor, or are there any changes planned for that?
I'm sorry, I missed
The
the first
Warforged and socket
Warforged.
system.
Yeah, so we really like the idea of you being able to kind of get an upgrade on a weapon, like it becomes Warforged or has socket or has additional stats. That system we think has worked pretty well. I think we've actually talked about maybe even extending it even more, so you have a little bit more variance in terms of the different types of things. And so even if you killed that first boss many times, you might get a better weapon that replaces the one that you've got. Not weapon, because artifacts are all your weapons, so maybe a different helmet instead. It's a clarifying point.
As you talk about artifacts, the weapons, obviously, all of them are weapons. So are weapons overall important? Will there are new weapons that are
You will
better?
not loot weapons in Legion.
So, okay. And will it be a legendary quest line? Or take the artifact to this spot, or will it be legendary drops?
We haven't actually talked about exactly how we wanted to do that. I think one of the thoughts we have right now is your artifact will start at epic, and then you'll have a way for it to become legendary over time. That's one idea. Another idea is that it starts out at legendary. So we haven't actually decided exactly how that will work.
So an artifact won't be direct artifact from the classic system, like there were.
We've also talked about the artifact being its own thing. It doesn't have a rarity. It's just an artifact. So that's something to be determined. But we do like the idea of, similar to what we did with Miss Pandaria and similar to what we did in Draenor, where you've got this item that you're working on powering up and it can become a legendary. We really like that idea. That feels really rewarding for people who played through the entire expansion.
Many players felt like the legendary quest line was difficult for twins. Can you tell us how it's for alts? Can you tell us how it is with the artifact weapon? Is it faster to level when we play alts, and also for different specs of one class? Is it faster for other specs, or is the artifact level based on the character?
Great question. So I'll answer the first one, which is we're not planning on any catch-up mechanics for alts. So your alt is its own character, has its own artifact path. We'll talk about that. It's something we talk a lot about. It's like, how are we helping alts? How are we helping that work out? Currently no plans to do that. On the specs, that is something we're actively talking about, because each spec will have its own unique weapon, and so you'll have to have obtained that weapon for that spec. But if you spend a lot of time in one spec and then want to convert to another spec, we don't want to make that too painful. So we want to have some kind of catch-up mechanic there. Don't know how that's going to work yet. That's something we're actively talking about a lot, because I think it's really important, because there's sometimes, even in certain raids or dungeons, people will respec within those dungeons for certain bosses.
Also when I'm a healer, and I suppose it's difficult as a healer. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Then let's talk about Demon Hunters.
Okay.
For a while. I am playing a tank, and I love tanking. But
what kind of tank are you?
What?
What kind of tank?
All of them, but at the moment Guardian Brute.
Okay.
And previously the Monk tank. So
Okay.
yeah, but the Demon Hunter, the tanking style, I guess it will be different. But will it be like, let's say, the Monk with his shields, or like the Guardian with the sail field, the shield, and the dodge mechanics?
We're not 100% on all this yet, but I think right now the thought is that the Demon Hunter is going to be a very agile class, and so I think a lot of different kind of agility, different types of dodge, parry kind of mechanics is probably what we'll end up going with in terms of like threat and damage mitigation. We wanted the feel of the Demon Hunter to be very agile, so they have a lot of things to rush in, a lot of things to rush out, a lot of ways to rush into danger, a lot of ways to escape. So that's kind of the theme that I'm thinking about now.
In the past, many encounters were considered melee unfriendly, so many raids were bringing more ranged classes, and with adding an additional melee class and making Survival Hunter melee as well, don't you think that's a problem?
I think there's always going to be encounters that favor range and encounters that favor melee. Like, I think that's just the nature of the business. I don't think that's a problem. That's something we've dealt with for 10 or more years now, right? There's just going to be some encounters that, hey, this class or this style of class is just better at this type of encounter. I don't think that's a problem.
Okay.
I think we want to make sure that the gap is not so significant that you know, the big negative experience with that would be, okay, melee, this is a ranged encounter. All you melee, we're going to kick all of you out. We're going to bring in all of our ranged guys, get this guy down, and we don't want that to be the case. We want everyone to be able to be successful and play the game. But I think there's always going to be a little bit of difference on certain encounters.
With the artifact weapons, let's say the Ashbringer and Doomhammer,
Yep.
I know 2 other guys who wield it at the moment, and my question is how we get those weapons from Thrall and Tyrion?
You're just going to ask for it. No,
Yeah.
not really.
Are they dead?
All that will be revealed at
Okay.
some point in the future.
So the same to Jaina and the Khadgar fight, or if not fight? Okay, we won't talk about it.
No spoilers. Well, some spoilers, but not those.
Illidan looks pretty demonic with his horns because he has the Skull of Gul'dan and made a pact with the Legion.
Yes.
Why is it that now every demon hunter looks like Illidan, basically?
Basically, the idea is that in order to fight demons, Illidan had to partner with demons. So he had to fight fire with fire. It's kind of his philosophy.
Okay.
And so he had to sacrifice a lot of things to gain incredible power. And that's kind of the path of the Illidari, the people who serve under Illidan. So they gouge out their eyes to gain the spectral sight. They commune with demons in order to kind of gain that demonic power. And that's kind of the result of what happens. Yeah, so all of those guys will have the options of a lot of different horn styles, a lot of different eye styles. I actually think there is a no horn option in the character customization that I don't think we expect anyone to pick, but someone will pick it. So it feels like that's kind of an iconic part of what it means to be a demon hunter.
Ian told us that he wants the players to go again and again during an expansion into 5-man instances. And
Yes.
How you want to force the players, or
It's a great
catch
question,
them?
and I don't know the answer. But if I think about the kind of one of the mistakes of Draenor is once you started a raid, you had no reason to ever go back to a dungeon, and that is not cool because actually we think of 5-person dungeons as some of our most successful, fun content, right? You've got 2 or 3 or 4 or even 5 people to make up that group, you can have a really good time. I think Mists of Pandaria was a much better model, right? Mists of Pandaria gave you a reward for doing a dungeon every day, which was this big pack of Valor. And then you had a thing that you could spend that Valor on. Not saying we're going to use that same system, but I think that was we were much more successful at making dungeons relevant than that expansion really worked.
Will dungeons have the same difficulty types like in Warlords of Draenor, so normal, heroic, and mythic? And considering that if you have mythic and they are available from the start, where do you see them in the progression before the raids, or?
Yeah, great question. I think for sure we'll have normal and heroic. I don't know that we are going to do mythic. I think we will add mythic at some point.
Okay.
We haven't decided that yet. I think it really depends on like Mythic is still pretty new in
Sure.
Warlords, and so I don't think we've learned all the lessons yet. But I really like the idea of an extremely hard Mythic level dungeon, or an extra difficulty on the dungeon system that kind of parallels the raid difficulty as well. The itemization that you bring up is the kind of the key thing, exactly, which is where does it fit in the itemization chain? So those are all to be determined.
And challenge modes will stay as well.
We still like the idea of challenge modes. We want to figure out a way to make them even more accessible. Not promising we're going to have them, but we like that. We like that feature.
Will there be a new talent tag like the previous ones?
We have not decided that yet. We've got a lot of abilities that are built into your weapon, and so one of the things that we may do is have all of the abilities in there. We may do another talent row. Haven't really decided yet.
The talent tree of the artifact weapon, can we unlock every trait, or do we have to choose like in the normal talent tree?
Eventually, you'll be able to lock every trait. One of the things that we're talking about is you may not all unlock, if you both protection warriors, for example, you may not unlock the traits the same. You might have some choices. That's something that I think we would like to do. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it, but that's one of the things we'd like to do, is you could decide, hey, I want to unlock this, and then I want to work toward this, and then and other people can make different decisions. But at the end, you will be able to unlock the entire, all the abilities. That's something we want to have happen.
For hunters, you've done a great shadow. Great, perhaps for some players, but the survival we're going to be in melee.
Yes.
And warlocks, I guess, the metamorphosis, the demon one, will change also.
Yes.
Will there any other class that get
We look at all the classes every expansion. I think we focused on Hunter and the 3 specs and the Demonology Warlock specifically to talk about. Those are probably the 4 biggest changes that we're making, right? We'll have a little bit of differences here, but those are currently the 4 biggest.
How far into the expansion do you think we will have to level the artifact weapon? Will it be max when we reach level 110? Or
No.
okay,
Definitely not.
so it should take a long
the
time.
weapon, the idea for the artifact is you're going to be leveling it the entirety of the expansion. So
Okay,
that'll
great.
include all the level ups, all the dungeons, all the raids, all the patches.
You changed the honor system to
Yeah.
version 3.
Yes.
Will the old conquest system stay?
No. Conquest is actually going to go away.
Okay, so the honor system will replace this.
Yes.
Okay.
On the presentation, you said that gear in PvP is not really great. Can you tell us more about that? Will it completely remove PvP gear?
Yes. The goal is to remove PvP gear. And so there'll be PvP ways to obtain gear. And then the way that you'll have your different power in PvP is about the gear that you obtain, but also about the talents that you've unlocked that are PvP specific. And, you could imagine us giving higher PvP level players higher PvP talents, or more different PvP talents to help them. And I think one of the things that we've struggled with is kind of this 2 gear systems, and we've done a lot of different things over the years to kind of like reward PvPers that only want to go down that track and not make them as successful in PvE, or have PvE and make them closer. Like we tried to make the gear is closer in PvP to PvP in this expansion that has been really in a long time. This is a really risky, radical, significant change in the game, is to get rid of PvP.
So is the item level going to be normalized in PvP scenarios, or is it just the PvE item level?
PvE item
Okay.
level today. Yeah. Now, all that stuff that I'm talking about is really subject to a lot of work, a lot of play testing, and we may change our minds and say, hey, this didn't work out, but that's our current thought today.
Okay, excuse me, we have time only for one last question.
We started later, 6 minutes.
I'm afraid you have the next one.
Okay.
Do you have a lot of them?
Yeah, we have many questions.
Sorry.
In a previous interview, Tom told us that the Demon Hunter will be a leather wearer.
Yes, correct.
And this is a little bit crowded. We've seen that why we don't get the male class.
We did talk about that. It didn't really work with the Demon Hunter fantasy of being this highly mobile, highly agile class. So we ended up deciding on leather. Much to the consternation of some of our players.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys' time.